I've always taken pride in being a responsible dog owner. Owning 3 dogs isn't a small task, and I never treated it lightly. From the moment I brought each of them home, I committed myself to training, structure, and discipline, not just for my sanity, but for their happiness and the peace of everyone around us. If they bark outside, I bring them in immediately. If they get restless, I redirect them with commands they know like the back of their paw. Sit. Stay. Heel. My dogs aren't perfect, but they're obedient and calm because I put in the effort. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's hours and hours of consistency and training. So when my new neighbors moved in with their 3 dogs, I didn't think much of it. In fact, I felt a little relieved. Maybe our dogs would get along, I thought. Maybe we'd bond as dog people. That fantasy shattered almost immediately. From the start, it was obvious their dogs were chaos. No structure. No discipline. No training. Just constant barking, growling, lunging at the fence, and general pandemonium. When they saw how well-behaved mine were, I could tell it hit a nerve. Their faces twisted with this weird mix of shock and insecurity, like my dog's obedience was some kind of personal attack on their failures. The kicker? When they'd watch me calmly correct my dogs, they would pipe up with comments like, "Don't do that. They're just being dogs. They're doing their job." Translation: please don't make us feel guilty about being lazy owners. I bit my tongue. I told myself it wasn't worth fighting over. But the tension started simmering before I even realized it. My yard was enclosed with a vinyl picket fence. $8,000. It was a big investment, but one I was happy with because it gave my dogs a safe space to run around. The neighbors, rather than building their own standalone fence, decided to use mine as the fourth wall of their setup. At first, I didn't care. It saved space, it didn't cost me anything, and technically it was allowed. But then one of their dogs started slamming against my fence. Over and over. Snarling. Snapping. Clawing. It wasn't just barking anymore. It was a direct attempt to break through my barrier and attack my dogs. Every time I let mine out to play, that dog would launch itself at the fence like a battering ram. Teeth bared, foam flying. My stomach tightened every time I heard the thud-thud-thud against the vinyl. My fence was sturdy, but how long before the relentless attacks wore it down? How long before the plastic cracked and splintered? I didn't want to fight with the neighbors, so I tried to solve the problem myself. I spent another $1,000 installing privacy backing on the fence and planting 15 boxwood shrubs along the line. My hope was that if their dog couldn't see mine, it would stop the frenzy. Backbreaking labor. Weekend after weekend spent digging, hauling, and planting. Sweat pouring down my back as I tried to create a living wall between our dogs. When the neighbors saw me working, the husband smirked. "That's not gonna work," he called out. "They'll still hear each other." The words stung because, deep down, I knew he was probably right. But I hoped maybe, just maybe, the visual block would reduce the chaos. Spoiler, he was right. The bushes and privacy backing barely made a dent. Their dogs still lunged, still barked, still slammed into the fence every time mine stepped outside. Finally, after all my efforts and extra expenses failed, I decided to reach out. I drafted a polite, carefully worded text. I explained that I was worried about the safety of all the dogs. I mentioned how concerned I was that the fence could eventually break if their dog kept trying to attack it. I even offered some solutions. Ways they could redirect their dog, times we could coordinate letting ours out, whatever might help. And most importantly, I ended the message by saying I still wanted to maintain a good rapport with them as neighbors. I thought I was being reasonable, mature, proactive. Their response? To play the victim and blame my dogs. As if my calm, obedient pets were the ones ramming into the fence. As if I had somehow orchestrated their dog's aggression by existing. I shook my head and tried to brush it off, but then the wife started sending me these unhinged texts. Paragraphs about how my message had ruined her week. How stressful this was for them. How I owed her an apology. An apology for asking them to stop their dog from destroying my property and threatening mine. I couldn't believe it. It was like stepping into an alternate reality where the aggressor was suddenly the victim. And the victim was somehow the bad guy. I ignored her tirades. I wasn't about to feed into the drama, but inside I was boiling. Eventually, they put up their own fence, a 6-foot privacy fence, attached directly to mine. Technically, it was an illegal height according to town regulations, but I didn't care. At that point, not seeing them anymore felt like a blessing. I figured, fine, whatever, if it keeps the peace, let it go. But peace was never on their agenda. Because now, with their tall fence in place, they started letting their dogs off-leash in unfenced areas. The very same aggressive dog that tried to break through mine was now running freely around the yard, charging into the street, even darting into my garden. I watched in disbelief. All I could think was, it's only a matter of time before something terrible happens. That's when I realized I needed proof. Cold, hard evidence. Not just my word against theirs, but undeniable video footage of their recklessness. So I installed security cameras around my property. And thank God I did. Once the cameras went up, I finally felt a sliver of relief. For weeks, I had been dealing with gaslighting, blame shifting, and outright hostility from my neighbors. Every time I tried to address the problem reasonably, they twisted the narrative to make it seem like I was the aggressor. But with cameras rolling, the truth wasn't just in my head anymore. It was right there on video. It didn't take long for the footage to pile up. The same dog that had been slamming into my fence, caught frame by frame, lunging with such force I could see the vinyl panels bend and shudder under the impact. My own dogs, on the other side, weren't even barking back half the time. They stood there nervously, tails tucked, as if asking me, why won't they stop? The other 2 dogs weren't much better. They roamed into my garden, trampling plants I had spent hours caring for. Sometimes they bolted straight into the street, completely unleashed, weaving between cars or charging toward pedestrians walking with strollers and children. It was chaos. Dangerous chaos. And all of it was being recorded. The final straw came one evening when I let my dogs out into the yard. It should have been a peaceful, routine moment. The dogs stretching their legs, sniffing the grass, burning off energy before bedtime. Instead, it became a full-on assault. Their aggressive dog launched itself at the fence with such ferocity that I swear I saw one of the panels bow inward. My dogs backed up, ears pinned, and began barking in defense. And right then, as if on cue, my neighbors burst out of their house and started screaming at me. "Control your dogs," the husband roared over the fence. "They're the problem." I stood there stunned, watching their dog froth and slam its body into my property, while mine cowered and barked in fear. The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. I tried to respond calmly, telling him that his dog was the one attempting to break through. But my words only fueled their rage. The wife joined in, her voice shrill and piercing. "You're harassing us. Your dogs are aggressive. This is all your fault." That was the moment I realized reasoning with them was a lost cause. They weren't interested in the truth. They weren't interested in compromise. They wanted someone to blame, and I was the convenient target. But what they didn't realize was that this time, I wasn't standing there empty-handed. This time, I had proof. I called the police. When the responding officer arrived, I showed him the footage. Clip after clip of their dogs slamming into my fence, of the others running loose in the street, of my dog standing obediently on my property while theirs wreaked havoc. The officer's expression shifted as he watched. From polite neutrality to visible concern. "This isn't just a nuisance," he said finally. "This is a safety issue. Those dogs could cause serious harm." He told me he was going to escalate the situation, and that the lieutenant himself wanted to be looped in. Not long after, I found myself on the phone with the lieutenant, explaining everything in detail, and sending over every single clip I had captured. And here's the part that truly validated me. The lieutenant didn't just take me seriously, he was angry on my behalf. "Send me every video you have," he instructed. "Every single time this happens, I want to see it. We'll find them each time if we have to. They're endangering not only you and your dogs but the entire neighborhood." For the first time in months, I felt like someone was firmly in my corner. Of course, when the fines started rolling in, my neighbors completely lost it. The wife sent me another barrage of texts, this time dripping with venom. She accused me of being vindictive. She said I was out to ruin their lives. She even implied that by involving the police, I had created some kind of hostile environment in the neighborhood. I didn't bother replying. What could I say to someone who twisted reality at every turn? The fines weren't my doing. They weren't punishments I had chosen. They were the direct result of their behavior, captured on camera, documented, undeniable. Still they raged. Every time they saw me outside, I could feel their eyes boring into me, filled with resentment. They muttered curses under their breath, sometimes loud enough for me to hear. They slammed doors when I walked past. Their anger only fueled my determination. I wasn't about to roll over and let them bully me into silence. Not anymore. The lieutenant had been right. This wasn't just about me and my dogs. This was about the safety of the neighborhood. People walked their children down this street. Elderly residents strolled with their small pets. And here were these three untrained, uncontrolled dogs, darting into traffic, lunging at strangers, and threatening violence at every turn. I started paying closer attention. Reviewing camera footage became part of my routine. Every morning with my coffee, I'd scroll through the previous day's clips, saving anything that showed the dogs running loose or trying to break through my fence. The pile of evidence grew larger and larger. Every file was a reminder that I wasn't crazy. Every video was a shield against their lies. But what I didn't know yet, what I couldn't have predicted, was that the most satisfying piece of evidence was still to come. Because as much as I hated the barking, the lunging, the aggression, there was one particular act of carelessness my neighbors loved to indulge in. And it was about to become the centerpiece of their downfall. That's the close of Chapter 2, escalation, proof, and the police finally stepping in. By the time the police were fining them regularly, I thought maybe, just maybe, my neighbors would finally get the message. They had been warned, penalized, and flat out told their dogs were a danger. But if there's one thing I had learned about these people, it's that accountability was not in their vocabulary. They didn't change their behavior. They didn't leash their dogs. They didn't stop letting them run wild. Instead, they doubled down on their victim narrative, muttering curses whenever I stepped outside, glaring from their windows, and complaining to anyone who would listen about how unfairly they were being treated. But the universe has a funny way of serving opportunities. And this time, it handed me a golden one. It started with something small. A walk across the street. There's a wildlife refuge just opposite our houses. A peaceful strip of green where neighbors often take their dogs for fresh air. It's not just a scenic spot, though. It's also protected land, and there are clear rules posted about cleaning up after pets. No exceptions. One evening, I noticed my neighbors heading across the street with one of their dogs. I wasn't even paying close attention at first. After all, it wasn't unusual. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught it. The dog squatted, did its business, and my neighbors just kept walking. No bag, no paws, no effort to clean it up. I blinked, almost in disbelief. Were they seriously that careless? Not just letting their dogs terrorize the neighborhood, but also leaving landmines in a communal space? Thankfully, my cameras didn't blink. The whole thing was caught on video, crystal clear. Now here's the thing about my neighborhood. People hate the mystery poop situation. Our community Facebook group is practically a shrine to complaints about it. Every few days, someone posts a photo of a pile left in their yard or on the sidewalk, demanding to know who the culprit is. For years, it had been an unsolved problem, a point of constant frustration. And now I had the answer. I sent the video to our community leader first, just to confirm I wasn't overstepping. His response came quickly. "Oh, this is gold. Post it. And email it to everyone." That was all the encouragement I needed. I uploaded the footage directly to the Facebook group. Caption simple, direct, and impossible to twist. Caught on camera in the wildlife refuge across the street. This is why we have mystery poop all over the neighborhood. The reaction was explosive. Within minutes, comments poured in. "So it's them? I knew it. Explains why I stopped walking past their house. It always felt unsafe. Unbelievable. 3 dogs, 0 responsibility. I always wondered who was leaving the piles everywhere. Now we know." Neighbors I hadn't even spoken to in months were chiming in, furious, relieved, vindicated. For years they had suspected, but no one had proof. Now the truth was undeniable, broadcasted publicly for the entire community to see. The kicker? The video didn't just show one mistake. The background footage also captured the dog lunging, pulling on the leash, completely out of control, even across the street. It painted the perfect picture of exactly what I'd been saying all along. These people had no control, no respect, and no interest in changing. But it didn't stop with Facebook. At the community leader's request, I sent the video out via email to every resident. Not just the handful. Not just the loudest complainers. Every single household in the neighborhood got a front row seat to the truth. And that's when the private messages started rolling in. Thank you for sharing this. We've avoided your block for months because of those dogs. Finally, someone stood up to them. The solidarity felt amazing. For months, I had been made to feel like the bad guy. Like I was overreacting or causing drama. Now the tide had turned completely. The entire neighborhood stood behind me, united by video evidence that no amount of whining or manipulation could erase. My favorite part, though, came the very next day. The community leader himself marched over to their house. Not quietly, not sheepishly. He knocked on their door right in view of the street, and when they answered, he let them have it. Neighbors nearby told me later they could hear his voice carrying as he told them their behavior was unacceptable, that they were shaming the community, that he would personally escalate things to the police if it continued. I wasn't there for the whole conversation, but I didn't need to be. Just watching them squirm on the porch, their smug expressions replaced with red-faced embarrassment, was enough. That night, for the first time in ages, I sat on my porch and felt peace. The dogs still barked. The neighbors still glared. But it didn't matter anymore. Because now, the truth was out there. Everyone knew they were the ones who let their dogs off leash, allowed an aggressive dog to try and attack others, never picked up after them. They couldn't spin it. They couldn't blame me. Every accusation I had made, every warning I had voiced, was backed by hard, undeniable proof. And the best part? I didn't even have to lift a finger beyond pressing upload. The community leader had handled the confrontation. The neighbors had shamed themselves. The police were ready to find them again at the drop of a hat. All I had to do was sit back, sip my coffee, and enjoy the sweet, quiet taste of justice. For once, the barking wasn't in my head. It was in theirs. And that, dear reader, is how I went from being the uptight dog owner my neighbors mocked to the one who finally exposed them for what they really were. Irresponsible. Careless. Selfish. The whole neighborhood knew it now. And I knew one thing for certain. In this battle of fences, dogs, and responsibility, the truth and a little bit of petty revenge was the best weapon I ever had.